During my service in the United States Congress, I took the initiative in creating the Internet.
Al Gore didn't really invent the Internet, but people of his age divide their lives into two periods, life before the Internet and life after. Meet my friend John. Before the Internet, he was kind of a local superhero. The Internet saved his life because being a superhero is actually super dangerous.
I was an undercover investigator. I was hired and paid by a fund that was called the Furtherance of Justice Fund, FOJ. They don't call it that now. But basically law enforcement would come to me and say, we have a problem we need you to infiltrate that they couldn't do. Maybe because they didn't want to be discovered, or maybe they didn't want to get anyone to get burned. And so they would hire me to infiltrate crime rings. And then I would go from crime ring to crime ring and infiltrate and bust them up and get paid. I had actually cleaned up the short north of Columbus. Have you ever been there in the short north?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that way because of me.
Oh.
Because in the 80s, that was a terrible place to be. You couldn't go there and be safe. And I decided to clean it up. And I did this without asking permission of anyone. Columbus Dispatch did a story about me and never told who I was. And what it did, it forced the Columbus police and the city to put resources into cleaning up the short north. And don't get me wrong, there were brave business owners who put asset into there and money into that. But really, I would say that I was a catalyst for making the city of Columbus clean it up. And it was very dangerous. You know, I stopped the prostitution, I stopped the drug dealing, and then I had to quit because I was either going to be dead or in jail myself. So, but that's my claim to fame, although no one knows it. Everything was by hand, you know. I infiltrated criminal rings, but if I needed information, I had to go find a telephone book, or I had to go down to the courthouse and leaf through tons and tons of records, you know. There was no get online and look them up, you know. So it was really tedious.
So what did it take to connect to the Internet, like when it first came out?
The telephone, and it was like slow, and it would be maddening. And it's you'd be like, come on, and then it would just be slow. And if you were in an office building with a bunch of people on it, it was just slow, but still better than nothing. But yeah, it was slow. The modems were telephones. I didn't start seeing the internet, being involved with the internet, until 1989, and then it exponentially grew, so that by 1992, 1993, I was really utilizing it at work, but I didn't have it at home. Well, and I didn't have it at home because we had slow internet. After I stopped being an undercover investigator, I became someone who found people, a skip tracer. And now I could access, so in your early 90s, mid 90s, you started to get search engines, Anywho, Dogpile, you know, you had, of course, AOL, and Google. And I immediately identified Google as being the best, and I would run tests on it. So now you could access online phone books, you could access data online, it was so much better. And so I developed systems for finding people where I could just hit a key and everything would be searched for that name, and then it would come back to me. So and I even wrote articles about it in the mid 2000s on how to do it, and how I became a real Google master, you know, and so it just made my work so much easier. I could work literally in skip tracing and looking for people. I could look for 1,000 people a day just by hitting a button, boom, boom, boom. And then of course I'd have to go through the data, but I speed read. So yeah, it made me look like a genius, which I'm not. There was so much data that people didn't opt out of, so it was just great. A lot of criminals in the type I worked, where they stole and they were more white collar, even blue collar, but where they weren't on drugs, they were pretty smart people, and so they would use the internet the same way. And they could find witnesses, they could make sure witnesses didn't show up in court. Not that they'd kill them necessarily, but there's ways to keep people from testifying. So the criminals also have more access.
It's like overall, what do you think are the pros and cons of the internet?
I think it's great. Social media, I think it's great. People can communicate who could never communicate before. My wife has MS. She's sitting at home. She can talk to 100 people. She can let everyone know what's going on. I can check on her. But when it comes to information, many people don't know how to access good information. They get bad information that becomes internet truths, but it's not true. And so they just keep recycling it. And every time they repost it, it adds to the idea of the truthfulness of it. And so from a history standpoint, from an information standpoint, sometimes truth gets buried in the internet. If the internet had been around in the 1930s, Adolf Hitler would not have come to power, because every wart would have been shown on him all around the world. Everyone would have seen it. That's what it does. It exposes, whether people do anything about it or not, that's a separate issue. But it exposes so much. It gives people so much information that it would be hard for someone to sneak up and do something on a Hitler-like scale. I believe that also then prevents war. When people have more information, it's harder to go to war. Since the advent of the internet, where people have the internet, it's not as brutal because there's so much information. That's what I believe. And so information can be good if people cannot be brainwashed, as long as they can keep independent thought. So I believe that technology has actually helped us prevent wars.